A forbidden book that cannot be destroyed continues spreading death to anyone who finds it. The film begins by showing a calm atmosphere at a lake, where a woman named Teresa and a man named Caleb are relaxing by the shore. However, they are not alone, as there is another person, Jessica, who is staying in the cabin because she is not feeling well. Teresa is Jessica's cousin, while Caleb is Jessica's boyfriend, so the three of them came there together for a vacation. Feeling worried, Teresa returns to the cabin to check on Jessica and finds her still lying weakly on the bed. While waiting, Teresa sits beside her and reads a horror book, until she is suddenly startled when Jessica is somehow already sitting on the bed without her noticing. The situation becomes even stranger when Jessica is able to read the contents of the book Teresa is holding without actually looking at it, making Teresa feel increasingly uneasy and afraid.
A child's face looking through the window, discerned obscurely.
Let me in. Let me in.
And clung on. And almost...
Things take a disturbing turn when Jessica suddenly falls off the bed and starts releasing a strange liquid from her mouth, then without warning violently attacks Teresa and forcefully pulls her hair until parts of her scalp appear bare. In a state of panic and injury, Teresa runs back to the lake to find Caleb, but the horror is not over as Jessica follows them and immediately acts aggressively by grabbing Caleb's drone and smashing it against her own head. Caleb tries to help, but he ends up becoming a victim as well when Jessica falls into the lake, and from this point, the story shifts back to one day earlier to reveal how everything began by introducing a woman named Beth, who works as a groupie, someone who seeks closeness with musicians or celebrities, both emotionally and in a more personal way. Beth considers herself part of a band's crew, and at one point she is seen in a bathroom using a pregnancy test, which reveals that she is pregnant.
Beth, you in there?
The story then moves to Ellie, Beth's older sister, who lives as a single parent raising 3 children, Bridget, who often participates in protests, Danny, who is interested in DJing, and Cassie, who is still very young. After divorcing her husband, Ellie lives with her children in a modest apartment that is already in poor condition. Not long after, Beth comes to visit and mentions that the bell downstairs seems to be broken, while Ellie explains that she has been behind on rent for a month due to the deteriorating condition of the building, and they are even planning to move to a better place. It is also revealed that the apartment used to be an old bank, which explains why many parts of the building are no longer in good condition. In the middle of this situation, Ellie asks her children to buy pizza so they have something to eat, and after they leave, Beth begins asking about Ellie's husband. Ellie explains that her ex-husband has left without any clear explanation and believes that providing financial support is enough to fulfill his responsibility as a parent. Beth feels confused as to why Ellie never told her earlier, saying she would have come immediately to help if she had known, even though Ellie had actually tried to contact her several times without getting a response. While in the bathroom, Beth finally opens an old message from Ellie that was sent 2 months earlier when Ellie was going through her separation, which makes Beth feel guilty, although Ellie does not blame her because she understands that Beth also has her own problems.
I need you to help me figure it out.
What's going on with you, Beth?
Not long after, the children return from buying pizza, but while they are in the apartment parking area, a strong earthquake suddenly occurs.
Earthquake! Stay down!
After the quake subsides, Danny discovers a large hole caused by the tremor, and when he checks inside, he finds an old hidden bank vault.
Come on, Danny, let's go!
Driven by curiosity, Danny goes inside and starts searching for anything valuable, hoping to find money or something useful. But instead he finds old documents and a photo of a priest holding a mysterious book. He also discovers a vinyl record, which he decides to keep. His discovery continues when, in another room, Danny finds a chest covered with protective charms and crosses as if it had been deliberately sealed. And when he opens it, he finds an object wrapped in cloth, which turns out to be an ancient-looking book. On the other hand, after the earthquake occurs, Ellie immediately panics because her children are still outside, so she asks her neighbor Gabriel to help look for them. However, just as they are about to leave, the children return safely using the elevator, bringing Ellie a sense of relief.
You got so much more than pizza.
Good to meet you.
Meanwhile, inside the room, Danny invites Bridget to take a look at the mysterious book he has just found. Because it appears ancient and valuable, Danny considers selling it to help with his mother's financial struggles. As he tries to open the book, his finger suddenly gets cut, and the drops of blood that fall onto it are strangely absorbed until the book opens on its own. Inside, there are ancient writings that are difficult to understand, along with disturbing illustrations that make Bridget feel uncomfortable, prompting her to quickly close the book and tell Danny to return it.
Danny, please close it. I don't like this, Dan. You need to put it back right now.
However, Danny's curiosity only grows stronger, leading him to play the vinyl record he also found earlier.
You've been invited here. Library keeper here at St. Patrick's Cathedral.
From the recording, a priest named Marcus Littleton can be heard explaining an artifact called Naturum Demento, or the Book of the Dead, a terrifying book said to be bound in preserved human flesh and written in blood. The recording also captures voices of people objecting to the book, believing it to be dangerous and insisting that it should be destroyed. After that segment ends, another part of the recording reveals that two priests, Canon Damian Shanahan and Father Hugo Cortez, secretly translated the contents of the book. They explain that each page contains ancient rituals and incantations capable of opening a gateway to supernatural entities from hell. As the recording begins reciting those incantations, Danny attempts to stop it, but strangely, the audio continues as if it cannot be turned off. At the same time, the book opens again by itself, revealing an image of a demonic-looking woman that further intensifies the eerie atmosphere. Meanwhile, Ellie, who has just stepped out of the elevator, is suddenly thrown by an unseen force, and when she regains consciousness, she begins to feel something is wrong as she hears strange whispers in her ears. Shortly after, she experiences a disturbing supernatural event where unseen restraints appear inside the elevator and bind her neck, arms, and legs, leaving her completely immobilized. Not long after that, the situation inside the apartment becomes increasingly strange when only the lights in their unit go out while the rest of the building remains unaffected. Ellie then returns to her apartment in a noticeably different state, and without saying much, she walks straight to the kitchen and begins cooking, making Beth and the children feel that something is not right.
What's up, sis?
We were together sitting in a tall forest. I had the most beautiful dream.
Suddenly, Ellie seems to regain awareness and says that something is inside her before collapsing unconscious. In a state of panic, Danny and Beth try to take Ellie to the hospital, while Bridget and Cassie stay behind in the apartment. However, their attempt is blocked when the elevator can no longer be used, forcing them to look for another way through the emergency stairs, only to find that they have been destroyed by the earthquake. With no other choice, they bring Ellie back into the apartment, and Beth quickly calls Gabriel and Mr. Fonda for help while explaining everything that has happened. Seeing Ellie lying motionless, they assume that she has died, prompting Gabriel to lead them in prayer. In the midst of this tense situation, Gabriel also mentions that there is still an emergency staircase on the north side of the building that could be used to seek help, although to reach it, they would have to pass through an abandoned unit that is locked and would need to be forced open first.
I don't like being trapped.
Meanwhile, Beth stays beside Ellie's body while waiting for help to arrive, trying to stay calm in an increasingly unsettling situation. The atmosphere suddenly shifts when her phone plays an old voice message from Ellie, and the content sounds disturbing, as Ellie can be heard desperately asking for help while saying she is being tortured and burned alive. This raises a terrifying possibility, as if her soul is trapped somewhere else while her body is being controlled by something entirely different. Not long after, Ellie's lifeless body suddenly rises again, but it is clear that the figure standing before them is no longer the Ellie they once knew. Beth, who is closest to her, immediately feels that Ellie's body temperature is extremely hot, prompting them to try to calm her by placing her in a bathtub. Instead of helping, the intense heat from Ellie's body causes the water to start boiling, and she lets out a piercing scream so loud that the surrounding glass begins to crack. From that moment on, Ellie, now fully overtaken by a dark force, begins attacking anyone around her without hesitation, even harming her own child. Bridget becomes the first victim to get injured, before Danny quickly pulls her away to save her. In the chaos, Ellie randomly chooses her next target. The situation worsens when Gabriel arrives to help, but Ellie immediately attacks him with brutal force, killing him before turning on others nearby. Seeing a chance to protect themselves, Beth quickly shuts the apartment door to keep Ellie from getting inside. After things quiet down slightly, Beth peeks outside and sees Ellie still wandering uncontrollably while chasing a child in the hallway. Shortly after, Mr. Fonda appears with a weapon, but his attempt proves useless as physical attacks have no effect against the force possessing Ellie, and he ends up becoming the next victim. Back inside the room, Bridget begins to notice something strange and points out that their mother now resembles one of the figures in the book, then blames Danny for bringing the cursed object. Danny, overwhelmed with fear, tries to defend himself, but Beth quickly steps in and tells them to stop blaming each other. To explain everything, Danny finally shows Beth the book along with the vinyl record containing the incantations he had played earlier, and from that moment they begin to realize that all of this chaos likely started from the ritual that was unintentionally recited. Danny starts to accept that he is responsible, especially when the book opens by itself again, revealing a horrifying image of a woman with tentacles and dark fluid flowing from her face, as if foreshadowing what is about to happen. The wound Bridget suffered earlier begins to change, as dark liquid starts seeping from her body, followed by small insects emerging from her mouth, indicating that the curse is spreading to her. From this, they realize that anyone who is injured by the entity will become infected and eventually possessed. Meanwhile, Cassie, still innocent and unaware, approaches the door after hearing Ellie's soft voice singing, and she almost opens it, believing her mother has returned to normal. But the moment the door opens, Ellie immediately lunges at her, forcing Danny and Beth to quickly pull Cassie away to safety.
Open up now, like a good girl.
You don't look so good, Mom.
Open up and let us in, Cassie.
Go to your room.
Not long after, a strange noise comes from the kitchen, prompting Beth to check it, where she finds Bridget crouching on top of the kitchen counter behaving unnaturally, and when her face becomes visible, she is seen chewing on shards of glass. Without warning, Bridget attacks by grabbing a cheese grater and injuring Beth's leg, then chases Danny into the room and even attempts to attack Cassie. As Bridget approaches again in a fully transformed state, Cassie, overwhelmed with fear, instinctively stabs her with a stick she is holding to defend herself. Seeing this, Danny quickly takes action by restraining Bridget, wrapping her body and tying her up so she can no longer move.
I've got no power to run a turntable.
I want to listen to that vinyl.
It's too dangerous.
In the middle of the chaos, Beth realizes they need answers, so she decides to listen to the vinyl recording again, even though Danny strongly objects, fearing it will only make things worse. However, Beth insists, believing there might be a way to stop everything hidden within the recording. As a precaution, she hands Danny a knife, then listens to the recording alone using a headset so only she can hear the potentially dangerous incantations. She plays the final part of the recording, hoping to avoid repeating what was already spoken, and from it, the priest delivers a warning that the book cannot be destroyed, and anyone who finds it must never read its contents and should instead bury it somewhere hidden and unknown. The priest also explains that the curse spreads rapidly and cannot be stopped, no matter what efforts are made, and that in the end, the only way to survive is to run. At the same time, Ellie, now completely changed, finds her way back into the apartment through the air vents. Danny and Cassie begin to notice something moving above them, and although Cassie assumes it is just an animal, Danny senses that it is something far more dangerous. As he tries to call Beth, Danny is suddenly attacked again by Bridget, who has risen once more, forcing him to fight back by burning her using fire from the stove and flammable liquid. Meanwhile, Beth, unaware of the danger behind her, is suddenly attacked by Ellie, who has entered through the ventilation system.
Even its final remnants will come out here.
I failed.
Just run!
When Beth regains her senses, she finds Danny in critical condition from the attack, and he ultimately dies from severe blood loss. Under immense pressure, Beth is forced to keep going while protecting Cassie, especially as the entity possessing Ellie seems to realize that Beth is pregnant, making her an even more dangerous target.
2 souls.
With what little strength and courage she has left, Beth manages to escape and takes Cassie out of the apartment, only to discover that nearly all the residents on that floor have been killed. In an attempt to find a way out, Beth takes Mr. Fonda's shotgun and tries to break through to the emergency exit, but Ellie appears again and attacks her, forcing Beth to fight back until she manages to temporarily disable her. However, the nightmare is far from over, as the bodies of those who had already died begin to rise again, as if controlled by the same demonic force. In a state of panic, Beth and Cassie run toward the elevator, which turns out not to be broken. Its door simply blocked earlier by a car key.
Dead by dawn.
Inside the elevator, they experience another terrifying event as blood suddenly fills the confined space, while outside, the entities merge together into a much larger and more horrifying creature. The creature continues chasing them through the opening above the elevator, but just before things get worse, the elevator finally reaches the ground floor. They rush to the parking area and try to escape using a car, but the entity relentlessly pursues them.
It's coming!
As the parking gate begins to close, Beth quickly pulls Cassie out, but Cassie's leg is grabbed by the creature, forcing Beth to go back and face the danger once again to save her. In the final confrontation, Beth grabs a chainsaw thrown by the entity and instructs Cassie to activate a nearby grinding machine, then uses all her strength to push the creature into it, causing its body to be torn apart piece by piece. In the end, Beth manages to defeat the entity and quickly takes Cassie away from the place. After everything is over, Beth and Cassie finally escape, but the next morning the story continues by showing Jessica, who turns out to live in the same apartment building on a different floor and remains unaware of the horrifying events that took place. She prepares to go on a trip to the cabin with Teresa and Caleb, not realizing that the demonic threat has not truly ended as the entity suddenly attacks and possesses Jessica, and the story comes to an end.